Number 10. Mother drops daughter into bear enclosure. In January of this year at a zoo in Uzbekistan, a mother has been charged with attempted murder after dropping her 3-year-old daughter into a bear enclosure. CCTV footage has surfaced online of the incident, and as you can see, the mother is carelessly dangling her young daughter into the bear pen. The child desperately clings to the railing before she's ultimately dropped 16 feet or just under 5 meters into the water section of the bear's enclosure. The mother stands there and watches seemingly with no remorse as others at the scene hurry to the child's aid. A man who watched this happen almost jumped in after the girl in an attempt to save her life, but realized zoo workers were already sprinting into action. Zuzu the bear, whose enclosure it was, quickly notices the little girl and runs over to sniff her out, but leaves her alone after seeing she was still alive and clearly not a snack. The bear was then taken into the indoor part of the enclosure so that zookeepers could rescue the girl and get her to safety. The young girl survived the incident with just a concussion and a few cuts and bruises from the fall, according to news outlets. The mother has since been detained and now faces criminal charges and up to 15 years behind bars for attempted murder. Number 9. Naked Man vs. Lions. In May of 2016, a man attempted to end his life by throwing his naked body into the lion enclosure at a Chilean zoo. Former soldier 20-year-old Franco Luis Ferrada Roman entered the zoo as a paying customer and then stripped naked, climbed on top of the lion enclosure, and managed to get inside. He proclaimed he was a prophet sent by God, and this so-called prophet quickly got the attention of the lions. At first they played with the man, but that soon turned violent as he was mauled by the two big cats. Metropolitan Park Director Mauricio Fabri later confirmed that a suspected death note was later found in the man's clothing. The note stated, quote, "The apocalypse has arrived, and I will know when it shall come. And I am the prophet, and I have returned for my people." End quote. In the end, the lions were shot and killed in an attempt to save the man's life. The zoo director Alejandro Montalva said, quote, "There were no fast-acting tranquilizers available, and she was left deeply affected by the deaths of the two lions." End quote. Witnesses at the event state Ferrada was screaming religious things and shouting about Jesus as everything was happening. As a result of the incident, he sustained several injuries to the head and pelvic area, but his body will recover. His mind, however, now that's up for debate. Number 8. Dancing for the Lions. How would you react if you came face to face with a lion? On September 28, 2019, local Brooklyn resident Maya Autry climbed inside the African lion exhibit at the Bronx Zoo. Guests at the zoo watched in absolute shock as the 32-year-old put her own life at risk as she seemingly happily climbed into the enclosure with the wild animal. She stood still for a moment while the male lion watched her from a distance. The two had a bizarre staring contest. Then, after a few seconds, the woman felt comfortable enough to do a little dance for the big cat. She waved her hands up and down while the lion surprisingly did nothing, most likely as confused as everyone watching from behind the enclosure walls. It's a miracle that the lion didn't immediately react and maul her to death. Autry seemed rather proud of herself and had no problem sharing videos of her dance moves in the lion's enclosure on her Instagram page. In one of her posts, she wrote the caption, quote, "I really have no fear of nothing breathing. Animals can feel love just like humans." End quote. Autry amazingly escaped the situation with her life. However, the Bronx Zoo, after receiving reports of the incident, had informed local authorities and police ultimately arrested her in November 2019. The zoo published this statement, quote, "This action was a serious violation and unlawful trespass that could have resulted in serious injury or death. Barriers and rules are in place to keep both visitors, staff, and animals safe. We have a zero-tolerance policy on trespass and violation of barriers." End quote. Autry now stands as a reminder for what not to do when visiting the zoo. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stupid is sneaking into a lion enclosure? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 7. Mandy K and the Polar Bears. In April 2009, a 32-year-old German woman named Mandy K was almost killed by a polar bear after jumping into the enclosure at the Berlin Zoo during the bear's feeding time. Obviously, jumping into the bear enclosure is never a good idea, but when they're eating, it's almost a guaranteed catastrophe. And that's exactly what it was. The woman, who wasn't exactly an Olympic athlete, still somehow managed to get over 3 different barriers that separated zoo guests from the animals. She expertly made it over the fence, the prickly hedges, and the wall surrounding the enclosure before taking a dive into the water. Mandy looked happy as she swam towards one of the bears, a reckless decision she would soon come to regret. Zookeepers tried to distract the animals to pull the woman to safety. However, before being rescued, she was bitten multiple times on her arms and legs. She was bitten by one of the older polar bears at the zoo, and she is extremely lucky to be alive to tell the tale. Within minutes of the initial disaster, the zoo staff was able to push the giant bears away from Mandy and pull her to safety. After the rescue, she was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment and had to undergo surgery in order to heal her wounds. The reason she decided to jump into the bear's enclosure is still a mystery. However, it is known that she had been going through a bit of a rough patch after losing her teaching job. Maybe next time she'll just try therapy instead. Number 6. Man's Best Friend. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a story involving man's best friend. On June 12th of this year, a stray dog was seen in the gorilla enclosure at the San Diego Zoo. The dog was in good spirits, seemingly unbothered, and wagging its tail until it was suddenly charged at by the silverback gorilla known as Frank. Visitors watched in horror as the dog was chased all over the exhibit, and they called out desperately for zookeepers to rescue the canine. The stray dog was one of 3 that had wandered into the park that day. However, he was the only one that made his way into the enclosure. Zoo staff on hand were able to lead the gorillas back inside their cages before the San Diego Humane Society arrived to rescue the dog. Officer Samantha Clark told KTLA 5 News, quote, "You can tell he really wanted to help because he wandered all over with his tail wagging." End quote. The brave pooch was given the nickname Mighty Joe Young, like the movie, in honor of his brave encounter. On Monday, June 20th, it was reported that the dog, who was actually named Meatball, had thankfully been returned to his owner. A happy ending for a happy dog. Number 5. Who Let the Tiger Out? On August 6, 2021, at the Rancagua Safari Park in Chile, a young woman working at the park was mauled to death by a tiger after the door to the animal's enclosure was left open. The unidentified woman was working her normal shift at the park, cleaning and performing routine maintenance when she was suddenly attacked by the tiger. She was killed pretty much instantly. She suffered multiple neck wounds in the attack, authorities said. Rancagua police were interviewed regarding the incident, and Officer Williams Espinoza said that the attack was brief. Quote, "She did not realize that the door of the animal's cage was open and was immediately attacked by this tiger, causing her death on the spot." End quote, he said. The Rancagua Safari Park staff refused to comment on what happened. It's unknown what happened to the vicious tiger, too. The park was closed while the police and Jorge Mena from the Regional Public Prosecutor's Office continued to investigate further to find out if a possible third party had anything to do with it. Ultimately, the investigation was to find out how and why the tiger's cage door was left open. Since 1990, there have been a reported 25 deaths due to big cat attacks in the US alone, 5 of those including children. Number 4. Orangutan Attack. On June 6th of this year, 19-year-old Hassan Al-Arifin, a wannabe social media influencer, allegedly hopped the fence at Kasang Kulim Zoo while staff were on their lunch break. Why? He wanted to get a close-up video of the park's orangutan. Footage taken of the incident shows the man taunting the orangutan, and the orangutan didn't like that very much, so he reached through its cage and grabbed Arifin by the leg and shirt. The giant orangutan almost flips the man, showing off his superior monkey strength. An onlooker tried to help, but was brushed away by the monkey. Luckily, Arifin did not sustain any serious injuries and was saved when a park visitor alerted zoo staff of the situation. India Times reported, quote, "Orangutans are generally non-aggressive towards humans. However, they are considered to be 5 to 7 times stronger than humans." End quote. While orangutans do not typically harm people, as they said, they are definitely strong enough to do some real damage if provoked, which in this case, it was. Following the close encounter, the influencer was thrown out of the zoo immediately and reprimanded by zoo officials. Hassan Al-Arifin had this to say, quote, "I was shocked when it grabbed me. The monkey's reflexes were so quick, it was unthinkable, and I was not prepared. I thought it would kill me. I really thought I would die." End quote. Maybe next time he'll think twice before trying to get his 15 minutes of fame. Number 3. Toddlers versus Elephants. Jose Navarrete, a visitor at the San Diego Zoo, was arrested on March 19, 2021, after taking his 2-year-old daughter into the park's elephant enclosure. The man was visiting the park when he decided to climb through multiple barriers with his child in his arms. His attempt was successful, and he managed to get into the elephant's pen. According to witnesses, the man's presence seemed to rile the elephants up, and it was said that Navarrete and his daughter were charged by at least one of those elephants. While trying to leave the enclosure, it was said that he narrowly escaped getting impaled by one of the elephant's tusks. tusks. He then literally threw his daughter through the gate in an attempt to get her to safety. Navarrete then jumped back through the gate himself, fell on the ground, and then picked up his crying toddler. The incident was swiftly reported to the San Diego Zoo security, but the pair had already exited the habitat by the time they had arrived. Zoo officials called the police and Navarrete was arrested and taken to jail. He was charged with child cruelty and held on $100,000 bail. Messing with elephants is not only dangerous, but can also get very expensive. Number 2. Harambe the Gorilla. On May 28, 2016, a gorilla named Harambe was shot and killed at the Cincinnati Zoo when a young boy fell through a fence into the gorilla's enclosure. The incident came just a day after Harambe's 17th birthday. Isaiah Dickerson, 3 years old at the time, was able to slip his way through the barrier. The young boy pushed past trees and brush before falling nearly 15 feet or just about 5 meters into the primates exhibit, which held several gorillas. 2 of the female gorillas were taken safely to their holding area, but male gorilla Harambe ignored pleas from the zookeepers and approached the boy. The giant primate then grabbed the boy and dragged him through the shallow waters of the moat within the enclosure. Those who witnessed the incident recall that it didn't appear like Harambe was going to hurt the boy. But in the end, he's still a wild animal, and wild animals are always unpredictable. A dangerous animal response team, also known as DART, was present at the scene, and they deemed the boy's life to be in imminent life-threatening danger. The team responded quickly, unfortunately having to fatally shoot Harambe in order to save the young boy's life. Isaiah was safely rescued and did not sustain any major injuries. Harambe was featured heavily in meme culture following the event and lives on in the hearts of everyone involved in the incident. Long live Harambe. Number 1. Protective Rhino Mamba. This story takes place in Basel, Switzerland in July of 1990. A 29-year-old unidentified woman was attacked and killed by the Basel Zoo's rhinoceros after she foolishly ignored zoo barriers and climbed into the rhino enclosure. The exhibit contained a mama rhinoceros and her young calf. The woman approached the 8-year-old rhino and actually petted it for several minutes before the calf began to approach the woman as well. When the calf came near, the mother's maternal instincts kicked into hyperdrive and she suddenly attacked the woman. After the first charge, the woman tried to escape while zoo staff attempted to get her to safety. Visitors watched in horror as the woman fought desperately for her life. Unfortunately, zoo officials were not able to act quick enough. The injuries sustained from the attack were too severe, and the woman passed away that day. Thanks for watching. Would you rather spend 10 minutes in a cage with a tiger or swim across a river full of crocodiles? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.